The title of today's sermon is inspired by my experience at the annual symposium hosted by the seminary that I attend, Star King School for the Ministry. Bearing grief, breathing liberation was the theme of our time together in the summer of 2023. And I find myself continuing to return to this phrase season after season as my grief for this aching world mounts. Bearing grief, breathing liberation. In the words of the poet Mark Nepo, everything is so beautiful, and I am so sad. How do we stay close to our lives' work of liberation while bearing such ever-mounting grief? The author of today's only reading is Bayo Akomolafe, who I consider one of my teachers and a prophet for these times. Born in Nigeria, he was raised with both Christian and Yoruban traditions, and I love his work because he stretches me beyond my familiar frameworks. Bayo is a philosopher and an activist. He's a writer and father and partner, and he founded the Emergence Network, which connects artists and activists seeking new responses to old problems. And that's the part that really interests and energizes me, the idea of responding to the things that ail us in new ways. When Bayo refers to the decade of the fugitive, he's not referring to some grainy CCTV footage of someone trying to get away with something or a Harrison Ford Hollywood character. He's referring to someone being chased who's seeking sanctuary. In this metaphor that he uses, the fugitive is constantly moving through spaces where they've lost their way, unconcerned if they still fit in the community that they've left, seeking new ways of being and places of living that suit their needs now. In the reading, Bayo says, the relentless curdling of the edges, the splashes of threatening ocean waves, the dimming of the sun by the dust in the air, the disappearance of bees, all conspire to remove this post-Ice Age refuge we have long known as home. The ground has withdrawn her endorsement. We are no longer at ease. The ground has withdrawn her endorsement. We are no longer at ease. We are no longer in a good relationship with this land that has held us for so long. To me, to move like a fugitive in these strange and changeful times requires a combination of desperation and curiosity. And I wonder about you who are committed to justice and freedom and interdependence. Do you ever feel desperate about finding a shared path into our future? Do you feel curious about the brave new ways that we could learn to be together that would make for a better and a kinder future? The first time I ever preached about climate grief was at my home church, the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Las Vegas. It was at the end of the summer that wildfires burned down the town of Lahaina on the island of Maui. And through readings and prayer, through silence and through singing, we really felt our way as a community into that grief. And at the end of the service, my good friend Rory walked a gaggle of crying children up to me. And she said, "You did this, and you got to help us get out of this." And I learned an important lesson that day. I had done a good job opening the grief box, and then I left everybody there in that sticky and vulnerable and uncomfortable place. We can wade into the grief even when we know that it's deeper and older than all of us combined, but we can't stay there or we'll be swept away, and we can't abandon each other in the grief. Inhaling all this shared grief, but exhaling and remembering that we are creative and resilient, that we belong to each other. Bio says, may this decade bring more than just solutions, more than just a future. May it bring words we don't know yet. The term Anthropocene, first coined in the 1980s by biologist Eugene Stormer, is often used to describe this current era. It characterizes this age as the one in which human activity has inflicted profound change, including global warming, mass extinction, and widespread pollution, all which leave a distinct mark on the geological record. Anthropocene. New behaviors need new words. About 20 years later, philosopher Glenn Albrecht coined the term solastalgia, combining the Latin root for solace and the Greek root for pain. This new word, solastalgia, describes a form of emotional or existential distress caused by climate change. This is the experience of homesickness you have when you're still home, and the ways that it's changing are breaking your heart. It is the loss of identity and homeland and community. It's mourning the stories that we were told about how it would be. And in this era of unfinished cyclical mourning, we risk losing our ability to create true narratives of love. This is solastalgia. New emotions need new words. We're making new words to describe where we are and what we've done and how we feel about it. Just like we can create new words, we can create new ways of being. Bearing grief, inhaling the pain of a world that is homesick for home, breathing liberation, exhaling and feeling deeper interdependence with and connection to all forms of life. Just like we are grounded by taking low, slow, steady, and deep breaths, our theology and our rituals, our ways of living every single day, help us remember those truths of interconnectedness that are so important in these times of melancholy. Now, some people might call the exercise of tending to chronic grief with the energy of creation hope. But it's not about hoping that the systems that brought us here will save us, because they have already abandoned us. But the spring of hope runs deep for finding new and innovative ways that we can walk forward together. Hoping for and investing in new leaders with bright, curious minds who understand that our bodies belong to the earth. Hoping to find and foster communities that understand that what happens to the body of the earth happens to our bodies. Hoping for and working toward the shared realization that with each species lost, there is less of all of us and less of each of us. My prayer of hope is a spell of releasing our attachment to the status quo. It is a blessing for that place within us that speaks in cleverness and curiosity and embraces the chaos of change. On Friday afternoon, I spent some time at the home of FIRSTUU member Nancy Edwards and her husband, Bob Randall. Both Nancy and Bob have backgrounds in anthropology, and many decades ago were introduced to the idea of permaculture, a type of sustainability engineering. Permaculture is another new word created to explain an idea that is both indigenous and new for this industrialized time. And it is the work of creating sustainable human habitats by mimicking natural ecosystems. As I chewed on a piece of raw okra that we snapped off a nearby plant, Bob explained to me how the two large reservoirs on the southeast side of their home serve multiple purposes. That they collect rainwater that they're able to use day in and day out, that they provide protection against hurricane-strength winds, that they provide enough radiant heat in the winter to protect the Meyer lemon tree nearby. And should there be more rainfall than these could capture, the runoff water is diverted down a path that grows swamp milkweed, a critical food source for monarch butterflies. In Nancy's words, permaculture is planning how to get your air, water, food, shelter, power, transportation, and community at a local level. This means without waiting for or pleading to or electing the right people so that the government can save us, which they show no signs of doing. Now, I don't know how Nancy and Bob would feel about being called fugitives, but I think that this metaphor serves, finding new, creative, playful ways of interdependence and shared care out of what some would call no way at all. Thinking thoughts and taking actions that are so unfamiliar to many of the old structures and systems that we're told we are so beholden to. This is the kind of creative and changey solution seeking that makes possible a new way, that brings us back to each other, that nurtures this interdependent web of existence. Inhaling the grief that so many people with power don't love our shared future enough to make decisions that protect it for generations to come. Exhaling, knowing that our commitment to interdependence connects us to ancient practices of regeneration and kindness and belonging. It is an act of love to remember that the antidote to so many of our shared pains is connection, and that by living with a sense of our own wholeness, we draw nearer to the wholeness of all beings. We are not separate from each other, despite what these shared and existential fears may tell us. In knowing our individual and shared wholeness and completeness, we can focus on living in peace and harmony and be good stewards to all of that which has been temporarily entrusted to us. Bio says we need trickster approaches. We need ways of dancing away or dancing to these fugitive spaces, dancing to sanctuaries where we can practice shape-shifting, to grieve, to mourn, to play in the face of this storm. Bearing grief, inhaling the pain of the world, breathing liberation, exhaling and feeling deeper interdependence with and connection to all forms of life. This is choosing to breathe in ways that keep you connected with your body and the body of the world. As we sang with the children today, as I sang to my little niece when she was tiny enough to fit in the crook of my arm, Allie Halpert's words again. Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones, and you know that you can't. Trauma specialist Resma Menachem says that if we don't metabolize our grief, it metastasizes in our body. It is through our rituals of return to ourselves and each other that we begin to heal. So I wonder once again, and for the final time today, about you, beloveds. What new words are flowing from you? What new rituals and new communities and new covenants and new life is ready to be born, to breathe renewal into this time of collapse and suffering? If this sermon feels like it's full of questions, that's because it is. May we approach our uncertain future with an insatiable curiosity about what each of us, about what all of us are capable of. We must abandon the solutions that keep us trapped in cycles of sameness. We must give up fearing for end times and learn to live in the meantime, in this middle place full of confusion and grief, and make do with partial answers to our biggest questions. The scar of modernity afflicts us all, but in the Sierra Nevada mountains, that will always feel like home to me. It is the middle of the burn scar where the bright green aspens grow. Life and death are everywhere simultaneously. We must greet our grief with more than empathy and tenderness. We must greet it with as much cleverness as we can muster, as much creativity and willingness to change as exists within our souls. May the structures that keep us apart from each other and our world collapse. May the embrace of our shared grief nurture a verdant path to a changed future. And may your love and your life always bless the world.